Good evening, friends. I'm sure by now you may have heard that our bishop has suspended all masses, at least for the present time. Here is the notification. In solidarity with the Archdiocese of Mobile and the Diocese of Biloxi and Birmingham, I announce today that public masses in every parish, school, and institution in the Diocese of Jackson are suspended effective immediately until further notice. This decision was guided by health experts, the Centers for Disease Control, the Mississippi Department of Health, and in light of the announcement from President Trump and Governor Reeves. The situation will be reassessed at the beginning of April in regard to the sacred Triduum ceremonies. The following directives are established until further notice in conjunction with the above suspension and the directives from March 13th. All gatherings in parishes are also suspended effective immediately until further notice, including faith formation, CCD or CIA, stations, adoration. All penance services, school masses, healing masses are suspended, as stated in the March 13th directives. And for the foreseeable future, funerals should be simple graveside service with a small gathering, and a memorial mass may be celebrated at a later date. All public St. Joseph altars are suspended. Weddings should consist of gatherings of 10 or less and must use the rite of marriage outside of Mass. The sacrament of reconciliation should be by appointment only and with 6 feet distance behind a screen. The diocesan chrism Mass will be celebrated privately by the bishop, and the oils will be distributed at some later date. Priests are asked not to travel outside the diocese until further notice, and diocesan staff will not be traveling, and some are set to work from home. Parish staff should limit in-office visits and encourage business to occur via the telephone and email. Now, I'm certain that these issues raise some questions for you. It is an unprecedented event in our experience of being parish. We are not suspending prayer by any means. In fact, we are encouraging people to pray more intently than they ever have, because our reliance on God to bring a resolution to this is extremely critical at this point. This requires a lot of patience on your part, a lot of effort. There are a whole lot of things to be resolved. I hope we can find a way to stream Mass for you on the weekends. I plan on saying Mass, and we hope to video that and make it available either on our YouTube channel or by streaming it. But we will update you as we move along. It is our intent to very much try and stay in touch with you, so we encourage you to refer to the website on a regular basis. We will certainly plan to provide messages of hope and messages of comfort and support for you during this time. The most important focus naturally is getting rid of this virus, which is deadly and it's extremely dangerous, and you understand the rapidity with which it has moved around. I think reflecting on Matthew Kelly's story, perhaps in that book, remember how that virus broke out, became a world event, while it was a simple story at that time when we handed out these books a few years ago. It is certainly not just another story at this point. I will ask Monica to post a message on that here on our website for you to review again. It's a very powerful story that now appears to be really prophetic in our time. Let us pray for one another, and let's pray especially for those who are suffering very directly as a result of this experience. We will be We will continue to be with you and to be in touch with you. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your response and for your generosity.
Imagine this. You're driving home from work next Monday after a long day. You tune in your radio, and you hear a little blurb about a village in India where 4 people have suddenly died from a flu that's never been seen before. You don't think too much about it, but coming home from church the following Sunday, you hear another spot on the radio, only now they say it's not 4 people dead, but 30,000 people dead in the Black Hills of India. By Monday morning when you get up, it's the lead story, only now they say it's not just India, but Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Northern Africa, and everybody's wondering, how are we ever going to contain this thing? The president has made some comment that he and his family are praying and hoping that all will go well over there. But everybody's wondering, how are we ever going to contain this thing? And that's when the president of France makes an announcement that shocks all of Europe. He's closing the French borders. Nobody in and nobody out. And that's why that night you're watching a little bit of CNN before you go to bed. Your jaw hits your chest as a weeping woman is translated into English from a French news program. There's a man lying in hospital in Paris, dying of the mystery flu. It's come to Europe. Britain closes its borders, but it's too late. Panic strikes. As best they can tell, after you contract the disease, you have 1 week of unbelievable symptoms, and then you just die. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows how to stop it from spreading, and nobody knows how to cure it. Britain's closed its borders, but it breaks out in Southampton, Liverpool, and London. And on Tuesday morning, the President of the United States makes the following announcement. Due to a national security risk, all flights to and from America have been canceled. If you have loved ones overseas, I'm sorry. They cannot come home until we find a cure for this thing. Within 4 days, America is plunged into an unbelievable fear. Preachers on television are saying it's the scourge of God. People are wondering, well, what if it comes to this country? And on Tuesday night, you're at church for a meeting when somebody comes running in from the parking lot screaming, "Turn on a radio!" And while everyone listens to a small radio, the announcement is made that 2 women are lying in a hospital in New York City, dying of the mystery flu. It's come to America. Within hours, the disease seems to envelop the country. People are working around the clock trying to find an antidote, but nothing is working. And the disease breaks out in California, Oregon, Florida, Massachusetts. It's as though it's just sweeping in from the borders. And then all of a sudden the news comes out. The code has been broken. A cure can be found. A vaccine can be made. But it's going to take the blood of somebody who hasn't been infected. And so sure enough, each and every single one of us is asked to do just one thing. Go to your nearest hospital and have your blood tested. By the time you and I get down to the hospital, it's late Friday night. And they've got long lines of people. And they've got doctors and nurses coming out and taking blood and putting labels on it. And they take your blood and they say, wait here in the parking lot. And you stand around in the parking lot with thousands of people, with your family, with your friends, scared, waiting, wondering what on earth is going on here. Wondering how, in this modern day and age, did we ever allow it to come to this? And then all of a sudden, a young man comes racing out of the hospital. He's screaming a name and waving a clipboard. You don't hear his name. He screams the name again. You don't hear him again. But then your son tugs at your jacket and says, that's me. That's my name they're calling. Before you know it, they've grabbed your son. They're racing him into the hospital. You run after them. You say, wait a minute. Hold on. Where are you going? What are you doing? That's my son. They say, it's okay. We think he's got the right blood type. We just need to check one more time to make sure he doesn't have the disease. 5 minutes later, out come the doctors and nurses, crying, hugging, laughing. It's the first time you've seen anybody laugh in almost a week. And an old doctor walks over to you and your spouse and he says, thank you. Your son's blood, It's perfect. We can use it to make a vaccine and put an end to this thing once and for all. As that news begins to spread across the parking lot, people begin to scream and pray and laugh and cry. But then the old gray-haired doctor pulls you and your spouse aside for another minute. He says to you, "We didn't realize that the donor would be a child. We didn't realize the donor would be a child. We're going to need you to sign a consent form." Well, that seems simple enough. So you take the pen, you begin to sign the form. But as you do, you realize that the box for the number of pints of blood to be taken is empty. So you stop signing and you look up at the old doctor and you say, "How many pints?" And that is when the old doctor's smile fades. He looks away from you. He says, "We didn't realize it would be a child. We weren't ready for that." You say to him again, "How many pints?" The old doctor says, "We're going to need it all." What do you mean you're going to need it all? You said, "He's my only son." Doctor grabs you by the shoulders and he shakes you and he looks you in the eye and he says, "We are talking about the whole world here. Do you understand that? The whole world." You say to him, "But, can't you give him a transfusion?" Doctor says, "If we had clean blood, we would, but we don't. Please, will you sign the form? We need to hurry." What would you do? What would you do? Will you sign the form because you realize it's the only thing to do? And then the old doctor says to you, "Would you like to have a moment with your son before we get started? Could you walk back into that hospital room where your son sits there saying, 'Mommy, Daddy, what's going on?' Could you tell your son you love him? And then when the doctors and nurses come back and say, 'I'm sorry, you'll have to leave now. We've got to get started. People all over the world are dying.' Could you leave? Just turn around and walk out while your son sits there saying, 'Mommy, Daddy, what's going on? Where are you going? Why are you leaving? Why have you abandoned me?' And then next week, next Sunday, when they hold a ceremony to honor your son and his phenomenal contributions, some people don't bother to come because they got better things to do. A whole bunch of people come with a pretentious smile. They pretend to care, but they're really more interested in the whole social aspect of it all. And another bunch of people sit around and say, 'This is pretty boring.' What would you want to say to them? Wouldn't you want to stand up and say, 'Excuse me, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but the incredible life you have, my son, he died so you could have that life.